Jack Daniel's 14-year Batch 2. I finally got my hands on all three of the Jack Daniels, and we are going to slowly go through them, and we're going to start with the 14. 14 Batch 1 was one of my absolute favorite whiskeys last year. Really hard to top that whiskey, I'm just going to be honest, of all the whiskeys that I was able to get my hands on. So I'm pretty excited to see if the Batch 2 can live up to that. It's Jack Daniel's 14, worth chasing down, and is it still a Whiskey of the Year competitor on 2 Minute Tuesday? So let's do a little bit of comparison. Jack Daniel's 14 Batch 1 was 126.3 proof. That was a pretty high proof for any of the age state of Jack Daniels, considering that we've seen that the 10-year is brought down to 97 proof and the 12-year is at 107 proof. So getting that significant proof bump was something that a lot of people were really a fan of. Batch 2 is not quite as high. This is sitting at 117.6, but the real question is, does that drop in proof still deliver huge flavor, and is this the one to go after? As always, we start with color. Lovely bourbon color, nice and dark. Viscosity wise, pretty sure you can see that, but we've got some good legs coming through. Let's get in the nose. On the nose, the first thing I'm getting is quite a lot of forward brown sugar and oak. Underneath that, there's a good amount of kind of pepper, and to me it seems like torching or a scorch of fancy bananas Foster. So I get into it a little deeper. There's a little bit of kind of a dark chocolate and cherry thing, but it's really, really faint. It's very, very light in there. I'm not really getting a lot of other kind of more confectionery sugars or desserty type things, but there is just like a hint of like pipe tobacco to me. Let's see how this bad boy translates over to the palate. Cheers. Ooh. Well, that got interesting fast. This thing is a bit of a ride on the palate. Up front, I get kind of tannic, very oak forward hit. It's a touch bitter, but it fades away fairly fast, and then it hits this kind of like acetone sweet note, which is really strange for me, but then it like immediately tones back down, and then I start getting that very bananas Foster kind of thing, this rich kind of very dark caramel, which you could kind of tie back to that brown sugary thing that was going on in the nose. The oak stays through the whole time, but the bitterness and the tannicky portions go away, and some of the more sweet notes from the wood sugars and that kind of signature Jack Daniels bits of fruit, the banana, there is just the tiniest hint of that dark cherry and a little bit of chocolate as you start getting toward the finish. But once you do get into the finish, there's a lot of barrel spice influence that comes in. But the thing that I'm getting that I'm not so much a fan of is it does get pretty drying on the finish. It's just much more drying and very, very, very oak forward. A little bit of that kind of pipe tobacco is coming through, but it's very, very faint. It really is that heavy oak influence, that like short acetone kick, and then it comes into that like bananas Foster and a little bit of like dark chocolate and cherry thing going on. Let's get into an overall score for the Jack Daniel's 14 Batch 2 from 2026. This thing is a bit of a ride, and I am going to rate this an 85. It's really good, but that huge tannic up front note is kind of off-putting to me. And that weird like acetone kick up that happens, it's like a sweetness, but it's very almost nail polishy, and I hate to say it that way because we all think of nail polish as very astringent, but there is this like weird acetone sweetness to it, and then it comes into the flavor profile that I love out of Jack Daniels, that kind of banana Foster thing, those rich, deeper sugars, that little hint of cherry, that great oak influence from those 14 years where that bitterness starts to go away, but it really dries out kind of fast, and I don't remember that happening in Batch 1. So with that being said, let's do a quick comparison to Batch 1. Now, this was my Whiskey of the Year last year of all the stuff I could acquire, and it had a very particular note that I swear no one else has ever seen, heard, or at least I haven't seen from anybody else. But I want to see if it's still there. I smell it. It's right there right away. So up front, instead of like more oak influenced wood, it has a very like cedar quality to it. If you've ever bought like the smoked salmon in the cedar box, you know how fragrant that cedar is. That is here. And on the palate, I can remember it translating really well to like if you've ever had cedar plank smoked food. Usually this is done with a lot of fish and things like that, but remember that. Now there's also a bunch of sugar things going on, and a little bit of fruit that's in there. There's more cherry, not as much banana as there was over here on Batch 2, but you've got a much more like oak and darker sweetness thing going on here. Let's see how it is on the palate and compare the two. Batch 1. There it is. That cedar thing is so unique to the Jack Daniel's Batch 1, of at least of my whiskey drinking experience. And I really like it. As you get past that, and because that's the first upfront dominant note, there's a bunch of like molasses and some darker things. You get into a touch of chocolate and cherry, kind of similar to what you're getting in the Batch 2. I don't really get any of the banana note until I get all the way to the finish. And then I've got this not very spicy finish, but I do get that kind of cinnamon and bananas Foster thing, but it is much lighter. This thing is that big kind of upfront ride on that kind of cedar plank smoke note. It has a much more savory thing going on. Then it comes into the sugars. It lingers way longer. Like, I still taste this in a really good way. It doesn't get drying. The oak influence that, again, I said is like kind of cedary is wonderful. Let me clear my palate real fast and we'll do this bad boy. Let's go back to Batch 2 real quick. The nose is much sweeter now that I've got the two of them side by side. This has a like more woodsy cologne-y, that cedar kind of thing, where this has oak influence to it, but it's much more brown sugary forward. It's a bit sweeter. Whew. That bitter note kicks hard. It goes away really fast, but it's kind of like drinking an IPA. You get punched in the face first and then you taste it. That's how I feel about Batch 2. It gives you a punch in the face and then you start really tasting the whiskey. But that acetone thing is there. It's kind of tamed down a little bit now that I've had a few more sips and I've had a couple sips of the Batch 1. But it's not lingering nearly as long, and as it gets into the finish, it really dries out the palate much faster, which is surprising at the lower proof. I would kind of expect the Batch 1 to do this more effectively because it would have more of that oak influence and not be brought down in proof. But Batch 2 is much more on that tannic up front, heavy wood influence, but in a like drying and slightly bitter way. That's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It's still really good. I want to be clear, both of these are really, really good whiskeys. And while it took me a while to finally get a hold of a 14 Batch 2, I still like it. It's still really good. I think if you're getting this at MSRP, and let's start answering, should you chase this? If you get this at MSRP, absolutely buy it. Absolutely buy it. And maybe, if you get an opportunity to get the Batch 1, maybe you go after the Batch 1. It depends on kind of like the profile you're looking for, but that big upfront bitter note and that kind of weird acetone like snap that comes in, that is a little strange to me. Which, for some people, strange might be the type of whiskey journey they want to take. And in those cases, well, Batch 2 is the strange guy. Is it bad? No. It's not a bad strange, it's just different. For some people, they're going to want to chase those different experiences, because they'll be like, I've had so much Buffalo Trace, it all tastes the same, or I've had this much of that, and it all tastes the same. Different is what I want, Bentley. And in that regard, I would say, chase Batch 2. Would I pay full secondary for this? Would I pay the like roughly $400 the secondary is? Probably not, unless you're like a crazy Jack Daniel's fan, and you're that person that needs like, I need all of them. I have to have one of every release that's ever come out. If you're that level of kind of a collector and you're really, really into Jack Daniel's, maybe then it's worth full secondary. To me, I think I would cap out at about $200 on this bottle. I think MSRP is $150, so $200 plus tax. In Washington State, this is like $250. I think it's about where I would cap out on the Batch 2. Whereas Batch 1, this has something very unique to it. That cedary thing, that very like cedar smoked kind of thing that's going on. I don't get that in any other whiskey. And so in that regard, I'd probably be willing to pay an extra like $20 to $40 on this thing than I would over here on the Batch 2. So that is my review. I want to hear now from you in the comments down below. Have you had an opportunity to try one or both of the Jack Daniel's 14s? Have you had any of the 12s or 10s? I want to hear your experience in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're getting super, super close. I'm going to give away an E.H. Taylor single barrel, an E.H. Taylor small batch, and a few other goodies as well as my way to say thank you. And those three things, liking, commenting, subscribing, they're absolutely free. They only take a few seconds of your time, and they are literally the best way to tell old Papa YouTube, hey, I like what this person is doing. And someone else might too. It helps us grow our channels, helps us do all these crazy things in the Whiskey YouTube family. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.